Hi everyone, I'm Kate Macaulay from Pattern Emporium. This is the Make-It-Happen Hilo, and this little tutorial is to show you how to pop this gorgeous invisible facing on your neckline and your armholes, and it's very quick. It'll just guide you through so that you have the most successful facing experience ever. I hope you enjoy it. This is everything you'll need for cutting the facing. So your pattern, I don't actually cut my pattern pieces out for facings. I will show you what I do. I use them as a template. My fabric, this guy, this ruler, it's got a metal strip along here, and it's in inches. I don't know why they don't do them in centimeters in Australia, but they don't, not that I've seen. So this guy, a rotary blade. I can't remember the last time I used scissors to cut a pattern. My snippers, some pins, an iron, and my cutting board. Okay, so I cut strips first of all. So let me show you how to do that. So you've got your fabric. So lay your fabric down, and here's your selvage. And you grab your ruler, and on your ruler there's a 45-degree line on this particular ruler. So you lay your 45-degree ruler line, the guide, along the selvage here. Grab your cutter and cut all the way out there. That's the sound effects that cutting sounds like. So you cut all the way along there. I'm not going to cut this because this is my good layout board. But I did do it earlier, which is over on this side. Okay, so here's my selvage over here. So then once you've cut that, then you can lay your ruler down again. And for this particular pattern, you can cut a 1-inch strip. So I cut 1, 2, 3, depending on how many I need and how long I need. You need to measure the pattern piece, obviously, to do that. Okay, now that I've cut my strip, my facing, I get my pattern piece, and then I lay my neckband out on top, and this helps double check that it's the right width as well. So that if you cut it out with the pattern piece, I would lay it back on top like this and just double check that everything's in the right place. Right side down. Now I'm going to mark the end in here because that's where it finishes at the shoulder, and then I'm going to mark in the center front, the shoulder, the center back, and then I will just trim that there. Okay, so here we have our front and back bodice. I've just cut it off short because I'm just going to show you the neckline, and we've already done the stay stitching. Now, if you don't have one of these guys, this is a 1/4 inch seam foot. I thoroughly recommend it. I've been sewing for a long time and I've always hated facings. I've just avoided everything, anything that had these bias, turn to the inside kind of facings, because I just could never get them beautifully accurate and neat. And this guy, he helps do that. So it has a guide along the edge here, and as your fabric goes through, it's guided by this little edge thing here, by this little guide. So definitely use that. And then when you sew from the insides, from the shoulder inwards, and same for the back, and just leave yourself a little tail at each end, just in case you need it. Now the reason that you might need it is these can stretch. So you might need it to pull the edges in. Okay, let's get started. So we've sewn the shoulder, we've overlocked the shoulder. Let's open out our facing. And then we're going to pin it at the shoulder. We're going to pin it at the center front, aligning those notches. We're going to pin it at the shoulder with the side seam pushed towards the back. Then we're going to pin it at the center back, and then we're going to pin it at the shoulder again. All right, so there you go. Now, often you can find that as you've handled your fabric, especially if it's a fabric like rayon, that your neckline can stretch. You can see here, mine's stretched a little bit. Unlike stretch fabrics, you don't just stretch one to meet the other. These little stay stitches, you hold on to that and you pull until it meets, and then just holding onto the end here, just use your nail and spread that along so it's all nice and even again. And then you can see that that's even now. Pop a few pins in. So you need them to be the same length. So you just keep doing that for this side. It's sort of like gathering, but it's called easing because it's just a teeny tiny bit. And you've got to smooth it out so it's nice and flat. Not smooth it out so you lose it up here at the shoulder, but just smooth it out between that so that it's nice and flat when you sew it. All right, let's do the back. Okay, so you've got that all pinned on. Okay, so this is your 1/4 inch seam foot here, so you can see that my fabric's like right up against the edge here. So when you're sewing, it's not like stretch fabric. You can't pull it straight like this. You've got to follow the personality of the cut of the pattern. So keep your fabric all smooth over here and then guide it as you sew. Keep this nice and smooth and guide it around that smooth front there. And then just keep rearranging and checking as you go around. See how I'm keeping this nice and smooth with my hand. And then rearrange it again. All the way around until you get to the end. Okay, so there you can see that my facing is sewn on all the way around. And next we're going to clip this seam just from the edge here to the stitching row. Next we're going to clip around this seam here. So you're going to clip to but not through this seam here. So just about 2 centimeters apart. If the curve is a bit steeper, you can go 1.5 centimeters. So just clip, being very careful, and it's through both. So just being very careful not to snip your seam. You can also snip these tails off at centre front and centre back and at the shoulder. Just don't snip the armhole ones off. Okay, next we're going to grab the iron and we want to press the seam towards the facing. So if just using the tip of your iron, because we don't want to stretch this part out here, so just using the tip, carefully push that seam like that, just with the tip, and then always stop and rearrange your work on the table, because you don't want anything to stretch. So I've just got this held up against my body here so it's not hanging over the side. Slowly take your time. There we go. So you can see here, it's all pushed up that way. Next, we're going to change our foot over to just a normal straight stitching foot. And then I move the needle across to about 1.5. It's almost all the way to the left. Okay, and the reason is we want to understitch. So understitch, basically, we're going to stitch along the facing through the seam allowance, and this is right along the inside of that foot so that I can see it and so that it stays nice and neat. So right along that guide there. Now, you can see the stitch line through here. So what this stitch does is it holds the facing back on the inside of your garment so that you can't see it when you're wearing it. All right, let's head back to the iron. Okay, next we're going to iron this raw edge in here up to our stay stitching line. So just fold it in once, like so, and grab your iron. And very carefully, just a little bit at a time, iron that right up to that line, and only work on as big an area as you can have sitting flat. So you can see here, see under here, you're basically wrapping it around. So if you have a look on the other side, you can still see it on the other side. So you're basically wrapping it around your seam allowance. All right, so that bit's done. So we're going to pick up our garment again and stop it from hanging over the edge. And we're going to start from this side. And we're just going to do the exact same thing here. Now it's getting a bit awkward, so I stop and I move my garment again. It's to basically avoid stretching it. You just keep rearranging it so that you can have every little section flat as you're working on it. Okay, so you can give that a nice steam flat. Go up and down. If you go across like this, you get those little pulls. So just up and down, nice and flat. Okay, so now we're going to fold it in again. So here, see how you can see the green underneath? You're going to turn it so you just see the tiniest bit of green. And again, just working on one section at a time. Give it a bit of a steam. Stop what you're doing and move it around so that you can work nice and smoothly around this corner, over the shoulder, and it'll all just fit. See how it's just rolling into place? See that? Give it a nice blast. And from this side, nice and flat. Give it a nice blast. Alright, and then just fix any spots that you need to. Now let's have a look at from the other side. When I lay it down flat, you really can't see that facing at all. Okay, last step for the facing. Let's go back to the machine. Before you sew, you're going to want to pin this seam, and the best way to pin it is pin it flat on the table. So pin that all the way around so it's nice and flat. And just check it at this shoulder that it's not moved over at all. We can just trim off those little, there we go. All right, so all that is nice pinned, nice and flat, and let's sew it. Okay, now we're going to change our foot back to our 1/4 inch foot, but first you've got to clear your settings so that you move this needle back to the right position. If you don't move it back to the center, it's going to snap when it hits this. And we don't want you losing needles. So pop that new one in. And sew around that corner. Now the same rules apply as before. Keep this nice and smooth and keep this on the curve like this, and just work your way around very slowly. Work your way around, taking the pins out as you go, rearranging the fabric as you go. Take the time to rearrange. Around that corner, keeping this curve. It's very, very important that you keep all this flat and you keep sewing around the curve. All the way up to the end. Voila, there is your perfectly neat facing. And if I'd done that in a white, you wouldn't have been able to see that at all. And then on the back, you've got your understitch and then your nice neat top stitching, and it's all nice and even. And that is all there is to it. And that is how you do the neckline facing. Now, when you get to the armhole, it is exactly the same. So just go through the same steps one by one and add in your armhole facing to both sides, and then close your underarm seam. And you will be a whiz in no time. So I hope that helped, and I can't wait to see in the group what you've made. Thank you for watching.